Chalo, in this particular recording, what are we going to discuss? Essay 530, audit sampling. Huge essay. Huge essay. It goes for around 20-25 pages. Every attempt, one question or more than one question, minimum will come. 6 marks, 4 to 6 marks will come from this particular essay. Every attempt, fixed. Okay, now, what is sampling? What is sampling? Instead of performing your audit procedures on all the items, you're going to perform it only on a sample. For example, total says there are 1000 invoices. How many invoices? 1000 invoices. Are you going to perform audit procedures on all the 1000 invoices? No. You're going to perform on less than 1000. So can I tell, whenever you perform audit procedures, whenever you apply your audit procedures to less than 100% of the population, it is called as sampling. Directly come here, meaning of sampling, which is very important. Audit sampling means refers to the application of audit procedure. That means you're going to apply your audit procedures to less than 100% of items within a population. What is population? Entire set of data is called as population. When you draw a few things out of that population, it is called as sample size. Understood kya? Pakka kya? If there are 1000 invoices, it is called as 1000 is called as population. You have withdrew 500 from it, that is called as your sample size. Correct or not here? And one more term, each unit of the population I'm talking about, each unit of the population, that means all those 1000 invoices individually are called as sampling units. What are they called? Sampling units. How many words did you understand? 3. One is population. Population is the entire set of data. Second one, something called as sample size. Sample size means out of those 1000 you picked out 500. That 500 is called as sample size. Now I'm telling, in that 1000 population, each of those units is called as sampling unit. Understood kya? Pakka kya? Okay. The object, now you tell me. I'll explain it in very general, then we'll read it from here also. It is very simple. Marathon, I'll explain it. So we don't perform audit procedures on all the items. We perform audit procedures only on less than 100% items. You think and tell me. 100 items is the population. Changing. 1000 items is the population. You have selected 300. You have selected 300. You will perform audit procedures on 300 or 1000? 300. But you'll make an opinion. You'll draw conclusion on 300 or 1000? 1000. Very important. 1000 is the population. 300 is your sample size. You're performing audit procedures on 300, but you're going to draw conclusion on the entire 1000. You know why? Because there is something called as projections. Projections, you check the 300. You have got some assessment of ROM. For example, 300 sample size, you got 5 misstatements. How many misstatements? 5 misstatements. So you can make a projection, no? What? In the rest 700, at least 15 misstatements will be there. Now you think and tell me, is that 15 sure? It can be more than 15, it can be less than 15, it can be 0, it can be 100, it can be 200, anything. Correct or not? Yeah. So it is purely based on projection. Understood kya? Understood the story? Yes. There are 2 techniques of doing the sampling. One is statistical technique, one is non-statistical technique. What is statistical technique? Whenever while doing sampling, while drawing those sampling size, whenever we use some kind of max, some kind of theory of probability, some kind of science, then we tell it is a statistical technique. That means, can I tell, personal biasness is not involved. What? Personal biasness is not involved. Personal experience is not involved. But whenever you jump onto non-statistical sampling, it is purely based on your personal experience, your own biasness. Okay, last year I checked first 100 invoices, this year I checked last 100 invoices. Array, this is statistical or non-statistical? Non-statistical. Statistical, use some kind of formulas, some kind of max, some kind of softwares. You want, I can show it to you. You want? See, I'll show it to you. Wait. I forgot that website name. There are softwares for sampling. Where is that thing went? Where did it go? Check. I showed it in the last class. Here it is. Calculator later. See, these are the things which you're going to learn in this essay. Take it now. This confidence level, you're going to select this, your own confidence level, the margin of error, the population proportion, population size. Take it now. You're going to select this. Automatically, they will calculate the, if you click the calculate button, automatically they'll calculate the sample size. Understood? I'm going to show you because you don't know these terms, no? Once you understand these terms, then I explain you what it is. Understood? Okay. Continuing, population refers to the entire set of data. I was on this topic, statistical and non-statistical. Statistical is something which we actually are supposed to follow. We are not supposed to follow non-statistical sampling because non-statistical sampling purely based on biasness and personal experience, which sometimes might be wrong. Because I'll tell you honestly, if you use statistical techniques, are you applying your personal experience? No. Are you applying your personal biasness? No. Tomorrow, if at all, there is some misstatement which couldn't be identified in your sampling, you could prove it to the ICI, ki sir, we to used statistical techniques. It did not get covered. Inherent limitation. Nature of audit procedure. Nature of audit procedure. One was for that sampling. So sampling would come. You can prove it only if you use statistical methods. If you use non-statistical methods, and if there is something misstatement which you couldn't gather it, ICI will not listen to you. They're like, why did you use personal biases? Only because you use personal biases, you couldn't identify it. Understood kya? So always use statistical techniques. Understood kya? Population ka characteristic. That population which is there, the 1,000 invoices, there are three characteristics. What is the three characteristics? A, C, R. What? ACR. To make it very simple, it is CAR. 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 The population should always be complete. The population should always be complete. You think and tell me, 1,000 invoices are there. 1,000 entries are there of sales. They have given you invoices of only 800. Will you perform sampling on the 800? Or give me the 200 also, because if I do sampling, none of those 200 invoices will come under my sampling. Correct? And I have to make a projection also, no? So give the population which is complete. Appropriate matlab relevant. Appropriate matlab relevant. If I want to check data they need to give me thumbs. Understood? Then comes reliable. Whatever data they are going to give, make sure that it is reliable. Who has to make sure it is reliable on? Auditor. Understood? You know what are the factors which affect the reliability. Something which is internal, something that's external, directly to the auditor through the management. Correct or not? So please make sure that get audit evidence about the reliability of the population, as in the source. You remember source? Internal or external. If the population, if the invoices are internally generated, it is less reliable when compared to external. So three things. CAR. Understood kya? Pakka kya? theek hai. Sampling unit, I told you, each and every unit which forms the entire population is called as sampling unit. Correct? Sample must always be a representative of the population. Very important line. Sample must always be a representative. If you want to make sure that sample must be representative, better follow statistical techniques. It is a very big MCQ, also very big line also. Always make sure that 1,000 population, when you're selecting the 300, those 300 should be selected in such a way that you're able to form a opinion on the rest 700 also. Understood kya? Your sample should be in such a way only. Pakka kya? So sample should always be a representative. We do sampling for both test of controls and for test of details. Even for details we do sampling, even for controls we do sampling. There are two types of techniques, statistical, non-statistical. You're supposed to mug this. Taken a statistical technique. What is it? Use some kind of mathematical laws of probability. Correct or not? We can test a large number of similar items with a smaller sample size. No personal biasness. But non-statistical, personal experience and biasness is involved. Correct or not? Am I right? Definitely non-statistical method is very simple, but tomorrow if you want to prove something, you will not be able to prove it. Am I right? Correct or not? Okay. Sampling versus traditional method, not that important. Do RMN of it. What does sampling versus traditional method talk about? Traditionally, what were auditors doing? They were checking 100%. Traditionally, auditors were checking 100%. But even at that point of time also, they were not giving absolute assurance. They were still giving reasonable assurance only. Then they got to know. Those pragmatic auditors, pragmatic, sensible auditors, they got to know. If I check 100%, still I'm giving reasonable assurance. If I do sampling, still I'm giving. Let's do sampling only, Why to waste time? That is explained under sampling and traditional method. Understood kya? Then there's a good question over here, factors. It is a good question, you have to write this. Factors that should be considered for deciding upon the extent of checking on a sampling plan. That means whenever you are making a sampling plan, before you do anything, you want to make a plan. When you're making that plan, few factors you have to keep in mind. What are those factors? Size of the organization, state of the internal control. If the internal controls is strong, you tell me your sampling plan will be more detailed or less detailed? Less detailed, because the internal controls are strong. Understood? Yeah. Size of the organization. If the size is huge, your sampling plan will also be detailed. If the size is very small, your sampling plan will be that according. So like that, there are few points. One point I want to explain is these 2 points. Tolerable error range, degree of desired confidence. What is this tolerable error range? We saw something here also, here. Tolerable error range. Did we see? Margin of error. Can you see? This is called as tolerable error range, and something called as degree of desired confidence. Here also you saw something called as confidence level. Correct or not? What is this? Understand it thoroughly. Tolerable error range. If I hit you one punch, will you be able to tolerate it? Yes. If you hit me one punch, I'll die. Simple, right? No, simple. You didn't understand. Again explaining. Changing the story a little. If I hit him 2 punches, he'll be able to stand still. If you hit me 1 punch, maximum I can stand still. Second punch, I'll die. So his tolerable range is up to 2 punches. My tolerable range is up to 1 punch. Now forget the punch. Here the punch, substitute with the word misstatement. Substitute with the word misstatement. How much an auditor can tolerate the misstatement? You set up a percentage. If there is 100 invoices, I can bear minimum. I mean maximum I can tolerate up to 5 invoices. So can I tell 5% is the tolerable error range? So please, while you do the sampling, put tolerable error range as 5%. That up to 5%, if there are misstatements, it is okay for me. More than 5% if it goes, there is a problem. Correct or not? This is called as tolerable error range. Accordingly, your sample size will be selected. If your tolerable error range is very high, that means you can tolerate up to 15% of invoices to be misstated. Accordingly, your sample size will be small. If you put tolerable range as 1 invoice, your sample size will be bigger. This is tolerable range. What is this degree of confidence? How much confidence you want to get after doing the sampling? If your confidence level which you want after doing the sampling is very high, automatically your sample size will also be very big. Correct or not? But if your confidence level is 50%, 30%, if I get confidence, more than enough, your sample size will automatically be very small. Correct or not? That point only they have explained it. Understood? Yeah. So these 2 points, tolerable error range and confidence, has a relationship with the sample size. Understood? Yeah. Then advantages of statistical sampling, please read it on your own. Advantages of statistical sampling. There it is personal biasness, here it is no personal biasness. There it is no mathematics formula used, here it is a mathematic formula used. There sample size will be vague. Why? Because you're using biasness. Here it will be apt because you're using some kind of mathematical formulas. There you cannot prove it, here you can prove it. There sample size not necessarily should. One more point. Is it necessary that if your population increases, sample size should increase? Is it a rule that if your population increases, your sample size should increase? No. Why? Because there are multiple factors. Tolerable error range, confidence, statistical or non-statistical. Correct or not? Here, it is not compulsory that if your population increases, your sample size should also increase. Not necessary. Correct or not? All these points are covered over here. It's a very important question. Please mug it. Take it up. Please mug it. Correct or not? And there is one hidden question over here in these 2 points. Sometimes it is better to go with non-statistical sampling when compared to statistical. When? See, it is written. Under some circumstances, statistical sampling methods may not be appropriate. They are telling auditors should not attempt to use statistical sampling when any other approach is necessary. Will provide satisfactory information with less efforts. For instance, when exact accuracy is required, or in case of legal requirements, very simple. I told you, whenever it comes to law and regulations, compliances, will you do it on sampling? Law regulations, we don't do it on sampling. Array, there if you do sampling, 12 months, then the 10 months you check, 2 months you did not check, 2 months if there is any fault, no company dead to the. So whenever it is these legal requirements or something which is like related party transactions, all those we don't do it on sampling. We do it non-statistical. Non-statistical means either 100% or we will select which are those months which you find it to be very critical. Understood kya? Pakka kya? Then sampling process. This is sample design. Whenever you are making a sample design, please, that means that whenever you're starting the sampling, first make sure that whatever you're doing, it is for a specific purpose. What purpose? For what purpose you're doing sampling? To check the accuracy, to check the completeness, to check the cutoff. What is that assertion which you want to check? What is that assertion? Specific purpose, and also decide the audit procedures. After that sample size is got, you have the sample size. What kind of procedures you're going to perform? Whether observation or inspection or inquiry. Be ready with that answer when you're making the sample design. Then please consider the nature of audit evidence. What kind of nature of audit evidence? What kind of nature of audit? Audio, visual, oral, documentary, that kind of thing. Take care. And ultimately, why are we doing this sampling? Because we want to fulfill SA 500. What is 500? Gathering audit evidence. Why are we doing this sampling? Because we are supposed to gather audit evidence. What audit evidence? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Correct or not? Yeah. Then this point I'll do it. You will understand it when I do it. I'll explain now only. What is this? Stratification and value weighted selection. What is stratification and value weighted selection? There are 2 methods. One is stratification, one is value weighted selection. What is stratification? Learn the story properly. There's a population. There is a population. What population? Sales population. And in that population, if you see, there are 1,000 invoices. 1,000 invoices, if you see, each and every invoice, it starts right from 500, it goes to 5 lakh. That means if you take five invoices, if you take few invoices, the total invoice value will be 500. For few invoices, the total value will be 10,000. For few it will be 20. For few it will be 45. 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5, till it goes till 10 lakhs. So can I tell in that 1,000 invoices, the sales invoice amount is varying from 500 rupees to 10 lakhs. You think and tell me. When you use this sampling, normal random sampling method is one of the sampling. A random sampling means you will put random numbers Out of those 1,000, some 200 numbers you will take, those 200 invoices numbers you will select. Can there be a chance that in the 200 invoices, none of those big values have come? Can there be a chance? Yes, there can be a chance, because it is purely based on random numbers. I'm going to show it to you. Purely on random numbers, those 200 invoices are going to be selected. Is there a chance that in that 200 invoices, those big values like those 7 lakhs, 8 lakhs, 9 lakhs, 10 lakhs values, invoices are not selected at all? Yes, there is a chance. And it's a risky thing, because if the company wants to do a fraud, they will not do it with small invoices. They will do it with big invoices. To eliminate that kind of risk. What kind of risk? That those big invoices are not selected. We stratify the population. What do? We stratify the population. What is stratifying the population? Dividing the population into subpopulation. Dividing the population into subpopulation. You know what will I do? I'll divide the population into subpopulation. How? 500 to 1 lakh, one set of invoices. 1 lakh to 3 lakh, one set of invoices. 3 lakh to 7 lakh, one set of invoices. 7 lakh to 10 lakh, one set of invoices. Now I have converted my big population into 4 population. Now on each subpopulation, I will draw sample size. You know what is the best part? Now I'm sure from every range, I have got some samples. And so this is called as stratification. Converting a heterogeneous population into a homogeneous population. This is called as stratification. Understood? Kya? This thing they have written over here. Understood? Dividing a population into subpopulation which have identifying characteristics. Identifying characteristics. Are that 500 to 1 lakh? No. Similar. 1 lakh to 3 lakh? Similar. 3 lakh to 7 lakh? Similar. 7 lakh to 10 lakh? Similar. Each subpopulation, very important MCQ. Each subpopulation is called as stratum. MCQ they ask you, what is subpopulation called as? It is stratum. And units under those subpopulation are called as strata. Units under those subpopulation are called as strata. Understood? Kya? But units under the main population are called as sampling units. Units under the main population is called as sampling units. But units under the subpopulation are called as strata. MCQ they will ask stratum, strata. Understood? Kya? Next, what is value weighted selection? Very simple. By seeing the value of the item, you'll give more weightage to it. Similarly, you see audit, you take any paper, for example, you know that there are 4 chapters which come for 15 marks each. You'll give more weightage to them. You'll give more value to them or less value to them. Why? Because the weightage is high. Similarly here also, when there is one more option of doing the sampling, you see the weight of that particular invoice and you'll give them more value. If the value is very high, you'll give them more weightage to it. Understood? Kya? For example, those big invoices, you will definitely check. Small invoices, you'll check on sampling. Understood? Kya? So you'll give more weightage to those which have high values. Understood? Kya? That is called as value weighted selection. See, it is written, no? Value weighted selection, the sample size, its selection and evaluation will result in a conclusion in a monetary amounts. You check the individual monetary amounts. What do you check? Individual monetary amounts. Then comes one of the most important topic of sampling, which is called as sample size. Now, sampling can be done for both internal controls, test of controls, and for test of details. Am I right? Sampling can be done for both test of controls and for test of details. What is test of control, test of details? For internal controls, you do sampling. And even for vouching verification, you do sampling. You don't check all the 1,000 invoices of sales. You do it on sampling only. Am I right? Now we are going to discuss what are those factors. What are those factors which affects the sample size? Which affects the sample size. That means if this is there, no, then your sample size automatically will increase. If this is there, no, your sample size will automatically decrease. For both test of details, we are going to discuss those factors. For test of controls, we are going to discuss those factors. Did you understand the question? There are some 7-8 points in each of those. If the point number 1 is this, then your sample size will increase. If point number 2 says this, your sample size will decrease. Understood? Kya? 100% kya? Let's start. Kya? First we'll do for test of controls. Online is there. Okay, where is online? Here it is. Okay, what are those factors? Let's discuss one by one. First, they are telling for test of controls. If there is an increase in the extent to which the auditor's risk assessment takes into account the controls, that means the more assurance the auditor intends to obtain from operating effectiveness of the controls, the lower the auditor's assessment of risk assessment. Where is it? Risk of material misstatement will be, leave everything. Come to this particular line. Other things being equal, the greater the reliance the auditor places on the controls, the greater is the extent of test of controls. Automatically, the sample size will increase. Explaining it in simple term. Can you rely on internal controls? as an auditor, while you're doing audit, can you rely on the internal controls? Yes. Why? Because you're going to first check it. If it is effective, you're going to rely. Now think and tell me, if you want to rely more on internal controls, that means you will check more or less. You will check more. Automatically, if you check more, your sample size will be same theory only. If greater the reliance the auditor wants to place on the controls, the greater is the extent of test of controls, automatically the sample size will increase. If you want to score more in audit, will you read more audit or less audit? Same thing applies here. If you want to rely more on controls, you're going to check more of controls. You're going to perform more test of controls. Automatically, if you do something more, the documentation, the sample size will also become understood. Yeah. Second, next is tolerable rate of deviation. Understand this. Whenever it is test of details, that means amount wise, we use tolerable misstatements, error. Here we use tolerable rate of deviation. Now what is this? You remember the tolerable rate which I explained you? Mukka, punches. Take it. If I tell you, if there is an increase in the tolerable rate, that means he can tolerate up to 10 punches. He can tolerate up to 10 punches. 10 punches up, automatically sample size will decrease. And if lower is the tolerable rate of deviation, larger the sample size needs to be. Simple thing. When you're checking the controls, as you told yourself, if there are 100% of controls, I can maximum tolerate only up to 2%. You'll check more or you'll check less? You'll check more. But you were like, I can tolerate up to 30% of deviation. 30% if there is deviation, no, I don't mind. So what will you do? You'll check less. Your automatically sample size will be less. Correct or not? Yeah. Then comes something called as higher, where it is expected rate of no, 1, 2. I want to explain which point. This point. Chalo, take it. When there is an increase in the expected rate of deviation, when there is an increase in the expected rate of deviation of the population to be tested in the sample size will increase, and higher the expected rate of deviation, larger the sample size. Whenever before you do something, whenever you perform, before starting performing the test of controls, you'll have an expectation. You'll have an expectation. Correct or not? Ki whether the rate of deviation which I have expected, will it be more or will it be less? If you have expected that the deviation is going to be too much, you'll check more or you'll check less? More. What will happen if you check more? Automatically your sample size will. Same thing over here also. When there is an increase in the expected rate of deviation, you have expected it. Okay, in the controls now, I have expected that 50% there could be a deviation. Automatically, you check more, the sample size will be understood. Kya? Then, an increase in the auditor's desired level of confidence. What desired level of confidence? That the tolerable rate of deviation is not exceeded by the actual rate of deviation. Tolerable is something which you can tolerate. Tolerable is something which you can tolerate. You have decided up to 2% only I can tolerate. You don't want the actual to cross this tolerate. Again, I'm telling you, your maximum tolerable rate is 2%. That means you can tolerate only up to 2%. You don't want the actual deviation which comes out. No, you don't want that actual deviation to cross this tolerable rate. Correct or not? You don't want to get failure marks in audit. You'll check, you'll read more or you'll less. You'll read less. Read more, right? Because you don't want to get less than 40. Similarly, you don't want the actual misstatement to cross the tolerable. You want it to be less than the tolerable one only. Automatically, you'll check more. The sample size will be more. Understood? Kya? 4 points. And the last point it says, in case of large populations, large population with 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 1 lakh of population, the actual size of the population has little effect on the sample size because there are other factors also. Listen to me what I'm trying to tell. If the population is 2,000, is it compulsory that if the population is 2,000, you're going to check 1,000 invoices? And if the population goes 4,000, you're going to check 2,000 invoices? Is the sample size going to increase in the terms of population? Not necessary. Why? Because there are other factors also. It is going to be based on a tolerable error. It is going to be based on a degree of confidence. It is based on the reliance which you want to place. All these other factors also plays a very important role in deciding whether your sample size should increase or decrease. So it is not just that the population is large, sample size should also be large. Not true always. Understood? Kya? You won't believe all the 5 points which we have done in test of controls. Copy paste in test of details. There are 7 points. Yes, there are 7 points. So 5 are copy paste from this thing, from your test of controls. 2 points are new. What are those 2 points? Mark this point number 2 as new. Somewhere write it here. New. And point number 6. Point number 6. Instead of the word tolerable deviation, we'll use the word tolerable misstatement over here. Okay, only point number 2 and point number 6 is new. What is it? I'll just do point number 2 and 6. You remember something called as substantive procedures? Under substantive procedures, there were 2 things. One was test of details and one was substantive. One was test of details, one was substantive analytical procedures. Please don't forget the chart. Under substantive procedures, there were two. One was test of details, one was substantive analytical procedures. What are we going to discuss here? What are we discussing here? Test of details. So here they're telling the more the auditor is relying on another substantive procedure. That means you're not relying more on test of details. You're relying more on any other procedure. You tell me, you're going to perform less of test of details because you're going to rely more on other audit procedures. You're going to perform less of test of details. If you perform less of test of details, your sample size will be less or more? Less only. Again, I'm telling you, there are two substantive procedures: test of details, substantive analytical procedures. We are talking about test of details, but here the point is telling the auditor is relying more on other substantive procedures. That means you're relying more on analytical procedures. You're relying less on test of details. That means you're going to check less of test of details. If you're going to check less, your sample size will be same thing here. Correct or not? Here it is written, the less assurance the auditor will require from sampling, therefore the sample size will be smaller. Understood? Kya? What is this? Stratification. You remember stratification I explained you? You remember converting heterogeneous to homogeneous? You think and tell me, if you don't convert heterogeneous to homogeneous, you keep it as heterogeneous only, what will happen? The sample size will be very high. You know why? Because you want to make sure that all ranges of the sampling unit should get covered. But the moment you convert into homogeneous, now you have got subpopulations. Now you know, okay, every subpopulation I'll take some 5 units. Automatically your sample size will decrease. So when you stratify the population from heterogeneous to homogeneous, automatically your sample size will decrease. Understood? Kya? Pakka kya? With this we are done with 7 points. Then very important topic of this essay 530, the methods. What are the methods of that? We did was techniques, statistical methods, techniques, non-statistical technique. This is called as the method. That means how you are going to select those sample from the population. How many methods are there? 5. Random, systematic, monetary unit, haphazard, block. Again, random, systematic, monetary, haphazard, block. I used to show that Excel, but it is not there here. I made a sample and I was showing it. Take care. Explaining like this only. Randomly, there are two types of method. One is simple random. One is called as stratified. Simple random, very simple. 1000 invoices there. On you, if you open up an Excel, you just write is equal to rand between 1 to 100 numbers. Randomly, the Excel will give you some 100 numbers. Those 100 numbers, that 100 invoices you selected. So that means, can I tell, randomly you are selecting sample, but based on some mathematical formula, based on some probability theorem, correct, or some kind of software or some kind of computer system you used for determining the sample size. Understood? That is called as simple random. What is stratified sampling? You already know. We did it. Stratified sampling, conversion of heterogeneous to homogeneous, converting the population into subpopulation. Same thing here only. See now, copy paste they have written. Method involves dividing the whole population into few separate groups called as strata. You remember kya? Same thing they have written here. See, they have divided the population in excess of 10 lakhs, 775 to 10 lakhs, 550 to 775, 225 to 550, below 225. Understood kya? So it is written stratification means heterogeneous converted into homogeneous. Then called as systematic sampling. What is systematic sampling? Otherwise called as interval sampling. What is interval sampling? Take the total sampling size, take the total population divided by the sampling units. Take the population divided by sampling units. I'll just read it once, 1 minute. Systematic selection is a selection method in which the number of sampling units in the population is divided by the sample size. Number of sampling units in the population is divided by the sample size. For example, there are 500 units in the population. Your sample size is 100. Divide 500 by 100. What are you getting? 5. Give a break of every 5 and select one invoice. This is called as interval. Every 5th invoice you're going to select. It's a formula. What formula? Divide the total population divided by the number of sample size, basically. I'll tell you. Make it very simple again. Take the total units. Total units, can I say population? Total units, if I tell you, can I say this population? It is 500. Divided by the sample size. You have determined the sample size for 100. In that 500 population, you want to select 100. Divide 500 by 100. What did you get? 5. Now in that 100 of your sample size, every 5th should be, every 5th is like a break for you. Understood kya? They have written same thing here. They have written, see. Systematic selection is a selection method in which the number of sampling units in the population, that means total population is how much? 500, is divided by the sample size, 100, to give a sampling interval. For example, they have got the answer as 50. They have got the answer as 50. And having determined the starting point within the first 50, Each 50th sampling unit thereafter is selected with a break like an interval. In my example, it was every 5th unit which was being selected. Understood kya? What is monetary unit sampling? We did something called as value weighted selection. You remember? Same thing. Copy paste. Instead of the word value weighted, they have used the word monetary unit. By seeing the individual monetary value, you are going to select them. Understood kya? Then comes haphazard sampling. It is as equivalent to random sampling, but under random sampling, we were using some kind of mathematical formulas. Your haphazard manner, without any structured way. The moment you see in the question, this particular auditor did the sampling without any structured way, then you take a haphazard sampling without any structured way, unstructured way. You just write it as sampling. Understood kya? Then comes block sampling. What is block sampling? It is like a block of invoices you're going to take. For example, I'll take one number. For example, the total sample size is 1000. The total sample size is 1000. I'll ask you, I'll put in a system, give me one random number between 1 to 50. It will tell 45. Now that 45th invoice, from that 45th invoice, I'll take 5 invoices bunch. It is called as block sampling. Again, I'll ask you the system, give me some random number between 50 to 100. He'll give me one example, 60. From 60 to 5 invoices bunch, I'll take 1 invoices. This is called as block. You're taking a block of invoices and you're doing sampling. Understood kya? First you're using some random number. That random number, you'll take that invoice from that 5 or 10 or 15, whatever invoices you want to take. Understood kya? This is called as block sampling. They ask as a short note question on block sampling. 5-mark question they'll ask. 5-mark question they ask. Write about block sampling. Then what is next? Performing audit procedures. What did I tell? Whenever you perform sampling, on that sample size, you're supposed to perform audit procedures. For example, your population was 500, your sample size was 100, you're going to perform audit procedures on 100. Am I right? This is that answer. Please, auditor, perform audit procedures on all the items which have been selected. If you're not able to perform audit procedure on any one particular item, please replace that item with another item. For example, you want to check a payment has been made to a particular creditor or not. And audit evidence was what? Check. Check, check. That check was selected in your sampling, but that check was a cancelled check. Now, can you have that evidence? No. What will you do? You'll replace it with what? With another check for which that payment was made. Understood? Yeah. So basically, in this entire point, they want to tell key auditor, whatever sample size you have selected, perform audit procedures on all the one. If you're not able to perform on one, please replace it with another item. If you're not able to perform the replacement item also, then you consider it to be a misstatement. Taken up, and you perform audit procedures accordingly. Understood? This is the entire 7 points. Then comes nature and cause of deviation and misstatements. Now, when you perform audit procedures on that sample size, there can be a chance that in that 100 invoices, no, you would have found some misstatements. You would have found some 10 misstatements. You would have found some 10 misstatements. Now, identify the nature of that misstatement and the cause, that why did this misstatement happen. With that nature and cause, you'll be able to identify the projection of the other misstatements also. For example, in that 100 invoices, 10 invoices misstatements, no, all 10 invoices were from the month of April only. You think and tell me. Now what will you do? What will you do?
Check all of it.
Check all the invoices of April month. Because what did you try to do? You tried to find out a common feature. That common feature can be in the month of, in terms of months also. That means in terms of period. It can be in terms of product also. Product, for example, the company is selling 10 products. 10 products. I got all the sales invoices, mix and mash up. 10 invoices in a misstatement. All 10 invoices misstatement with that from this water bottle sales only. What will I do? Get all the bills of water bottles. For example, they have 2 branches, one here, one in T Nagar. I took sales invoices. All misstatements 10 were from T Nagar branch only. What will I do? Get all the invoices of T Nagar branch. So whenever you are performing audit procedures, you'll find misstatements. No, please identify the nature of that misstatement, what kind of misstatement it is, and also the cause of the misstatement. Understood? Kya? Sometimes what happens, no, 1 or 2 misstatement will be an anomaly. You know what is anomaly? Abnormal. Abnormal, very rare. Very rare. For example, in the 10 misstatements, no, you know what was one misstatement? The sales invoice value was 10,000, but by mistakenly they pressed 2 extra zeros. It became 10 lakhs. You tell me, is it a very common thing or very rare thing? So keep this abnormal misstatement separately. Then you consider the common feature in the others. Now this abnormal misstatement, don't make it a part of your normal misstatements. Why? Because it is very rare. It doesn't have a common feature like the others. Now please take this also into consideration and these also into consideration, and then you project your misstatements. Understood? Kya? Understood what I'm trying to do? These abnormal misstatements, if it's written here, anomaly may be defined as a misstatement or deviation that is demonstrably, matlab significantly not a representative of misstatement or deviation in the population. It is very different, very unique. But will you rectify that anomaly also? Yes, of course. Understood. Then comes projection of misstatements. I told you, whenever you are doing sampling, you have to make some projection. Test of details, I told you, no, out of 1000 invoices, you selected 500, you got 5 misstatements, you will make a projection. In the next 500, there will be minimum 5 misstatements. Understood? Kya? But if it comes to anomaly, don't use anomaly for projection. Why? It is randomly, it is very rare. You cannot use that, one now it will be 5. Not necessary. Understood? Kya? Pakka kya? Then evaluating of results, it is very bogus. Just put RMN and close it off. RMN and close it off. This projection of misstatements is a muck question they'll ask you. This nature and cause also, it's a muck question they'll ask you. And this performing audit procedure is also a muck question they'll ask you. Understood? Audit sampling. Done audit sampling.